The wineglass did not break. It rolled across the dining table in a slow circle, leaving a red trail on the white cloth before falling onto the carpet. The wall behind my grandson cracked instead. For several seconds, no one in the room moved. My name is Lawrence Wright. I was 68 years old that autumn, and I had spent 35 years recording testimony in Denver courtrooms. I had listened to murderers deny what everyone had seen, executives explaining money, and parents describe cruelty as discipline. But the worst lie I ever heard was spoken at a family dinner. He needed to learn respect. Quinton Vexley said it while my grandson Owen was lying beneath a cracked section of drywall, holding his neck and trying not to cry. It was the last Sunday of October. Thomas, Natalie, and Owen had invited me to dinner at the Vexley estate outside Denver. The house sat behind iron gates on several acres of land. The driveway curved past trimmed trees and ended in front of a stone mansion with 6 garage doors. Quinton owned Vexley Auto Group, a chain of 3 luxury car dealerships. His showrooms sold vehicles that cost more than the house where I had raised my children. He liked people to know that. My 14-year-old sedan had barely stopped in the driveway before he came outside and looked at it with a smile. "Lawrence, that thing is still alive? It started this morning. I'm serious. You should let me put you in something safer. I feel safe." "You shouldn't. At your age, you need modern driver assistance." Quinton spoke as if getting older had turned me into a public danger. "I've managed to stay on the road," I said. "That is what every old driver says before backing through a grocery store." He laughed. His wife Pamela laughed with him. Natalie gave me an uncomfortable smile, but said nothing. Thomas looked at the ground. Months earlier, my son had tried to take control of my bank accounts after his business began failing. He had reported me as too old to manage my own money and helped create false evidence about my mental condition. I stopped him. I protected my home, my savings, and Sarah's family trust. I also helped Thomas save his company under strict conditions. He had apologized. He had started counseling. He called me even when he did not need money. We were rebuilding our relationship. But trust does not return in a straight line. It moves forward, stops, and sometimes slips backward when fear enters the room. Thomas was still afraid of Quinton. The Vexleys had paid part of Owen's school tuition. They had helped Thomas secure business contacts. When Thomas's company struggled, Quinton gave him office space at one of the dealerships. Every favor came with a string. By that October, those strings had become ropes. Dinner began at 7. Quinton sat at the head of the table. Pamela sat at the opposite end. Natalie sat beside her father. And Thomas sat across from his wife. Owen sat between Thomas and me. He was 11 years old, though he looked younger. He had dark hair, narrow shoulders, and Sarah's habit of studying people before answering them. He also apologized too often. That evening, he apologized for taking the last dinner roll. He apologized when his fork touched his plate too loudly. He apologized when Quinton told him to sit straighter. I noticed each one. "Relax," I whispered. Owen gave me a small smile. Quinton was drinking red wine and talking about a new dealership project. He had already explained the size of the building, the value of the land, and the number of imported cars he expected to sell. Then he turned to me. "You spent all those years in court. You must have seen some powerful people." "I saw people in difficult moments. That isn't what I asked." "No, it's what I remember." He smiled as if I had confirmed his opinion of me. In Quinton's eyes, I had spent my career typing while important people spoke. He did not understand what 35 years of listening could teach a man. I knew how people changed their language when they were hiding something. I knew that honest memory was usually imperfect, while rehearsed lies often arrived in perfect order. Most importantly, I knew that a person's true character often appeared when he believed no one in the room could challenge him. Quinton believed that about everyone at his table. Owen reached for the breadbasket. His sleeve touched Quinton's wineglass, only a small amount spilled. Most of it landed on the tablecloth. A few drops touched Quinton's white shirt cuff. Owen pulled his hand back. "I'm sorry." Quinton looked down at the red stain. The room became quiet. "What did you do?" he asked. "It was an accident." I didn't ask what it was. Owen's eyes moved toward Thomas. "Dad?" Thomas sat straighter. "Quinton, it's only wine." Quinton pushed his chair back. "Only wine? It will wash out. That is not the point." He stood and walked around the table. Owen lowered his head. "I said I'm sorry." Quinton stopped behind him. "You always say you're sorry after you do something careless." "He reached for bread," I said. Quinton ignored me. He grabbed the front of Owen's sweater with one hand and pulled him out of the chair. Owen cried out. His shoes left the floor. Thomas rose halfway. "Put him down." Quinton looked at him. There was no concern in his face, only contempt. "This is why the boy has no discipline." "You're hurting him," Thomas said. "Then perhaps he'll remember." Natalie remained seated. "Dad, don't make a bigger scene than necessary." Pamela lifted her napkin. "Children need to understand consequences." Owen held Quinton's wrist. "Please." Quinton pulled him closer. "You don't grab things across my table." Then he pushed Owen backward. The boy's upper body struck the wall with a deep, hollow sound. Drywall cracked behind his shoulders and head. Owen went silent. His hands fell away from Quinton's wrist. That silence frightened me more than the impact. I was out of my chair before Quinton could turn around. "Release him." He looked at me. "This is my house. That is my grandson. He needs correction. He needs air." Quinton tightened his grip. "You do not tell me what to do under my roof." I placed my hand around his wrist. I did not pull. I pressed my thumb into the soft area below his palm and turned his wrist just enough to weaken his fingers. Quinton gave a sharp breath. His grip opened. Owen dropped. I caught him beneath the arms and lowered him slowly onto the carpet. The boy gasped. "Don't move," I said. "My neck hurts." "Where?" "High up." He tried to turn his head. I placed one hand beside his face. "Keep looking at me." Quinton rubbed his wrist. "You assaulted me. You were holding a child against a wall." "He is fine." Owen's breathing had become shallow. His face was pale, and one shoulder appeared slightly lower than the other. I had heard enough doctors testify about neck injuries to know that moving him carelessly could make everything worse. "Thomas, bring 2 folded towels." My son did not react. He was staring at his child. "Thomas." He blinked. "What? 2 towels? Place 1 on each side of Owen's head. Do not lift him." Thomas ran toward the kitchen. Natalie finally stood. "Owen, get up." "No," I said. "He is my son." "Then do not move him. He is frightened because you are frightening him." I looked at her. "Your father lifted your child by the neck of his sweater and drove him into a wall. It happened quickly. That does not change what happened." Pamela moved beside Quinton. "You are turning discipline into abuse. The wall is cracked. This house settles. It was built 7 years ago." Thomas returned with the towels. He knelt and placed them beside Owen's head. His hands were shaking badly. "Can you feel your fingers?" I asked Owen. "Yes." "Your toes?" "Yes." "Do not try to move them again." I took out my phone. Quinton stepped closer. "Who are you calling?" "An ambulance. No police." I didn't ask for permission. He moved toward me. Thomas stood between us. For the first time that night, my son looked directly at Quinton. "Stay away from him." Quinton laughed. "You finally found your voice?" Thomas did not answer. I called emergency services and gave the address. Then I explained what had happened in plain, direct language. An adult male lifted an 11-year-old boy by his clothing and pushed him into a wall. The child is conscious and complaining of severe pain near the upper neck. We have kept him still. The dispatcher asked whether the person responsible was still present. "Yes." Quinton pointed at me. "Tell them you are confused." I turned slightly so the phone could capture his voice. "He is becoming aggressive," I told the dispatcher. Quinton's face changed. "Turn off that phone." The dispatcher said police and paramedics were on the way. After ending the call, I opened the voice recorder. Colorado law allowed a participant in a conversation to record it. People often said terrible things before they understood they were creating evidence. Quinton looked at the phone. "You think that will help you?" "I think it will remember accurately." "You are not a detective." "No, you are a retired typist." I recorded testimony. Same difference. Not to the people whose freedom depended on the record. Pamela placed a hand on her husband's arm. "Quinton, go upstairs until the ambulance leaves." That was not concern. It was strategy. She wanted the visible problem removed before witnesses arrived. Quinton pulled away from her. "I'm not hiding in my own house." Natalie looked at Owen. "You embarrassed Grandpa Vexley in front of everyone." Thomas turned toward her. "What did you say?" "He should not have reached across the table. He is lying on the floor, because your father is making him afraid to move." Thomas stared at his wife as if he had never seen her clearly before. Perhaps he had not. Fear can blur the people closest to us. I heard sirens outside. Quinton walked to the window. "You called state police?" I called for help. The first people through the front door were paramedics. They carried a rigid board, neck supports, and medical bags. 2 sheriff's deputies followed. Behind them came a man wearing a dark jacket with a state police badge clipped near the chest. Lieutenant Vance Brockhurst. I had met Vance more than 20 years earlier during a large fraud trial. He was a young investigator then, smart but nervous. After his first day of testimony, he asked me whether he had spoken too quickly. I told him his speed had not been the problem. He had answered questions no one asked because he was afraid silence would make him look uncertain. He remembered that lesson. Over the years, I helped with several training sessions for investigators preparing to testify. I taught them how a transcript could expose a careless answer months after everyone forgot the room. Vance had risen through the state police, but he still called me whenever a young officer needed help, understanding the witness stand. Before the sirens arrived, I had sent him one message. Child assaulted. Possible neck injury. Preserve the room. Vance entered, looked at the cracked wall, and then at Owen. His eyes found me. "Lawrence." "Vance." Quinton looked between us. "You know this man?" Vance did not answer him. He knelt near Owen and let the paramedics work. They placed a rigid support around the boy's neck and carefully moved him onto the board. Owen screamed when they lifted him. Thomas grabbed his hand. "I'm here." My son's face broke. He had remained frozen when Quinton attacked. Now he could not stop crying. One deputy photographed the wall, the overturned chair, and the wine stain. Another began asking the adults to remain in separate areas. Quinton's voice became louder. "This is unnecessary." The boy had a tantrum. Vance faced him. "Did you touch the child?" I guided him away from the table. "Did you lift him?" He resisted. "Did his body strike the wall?" He pulled himself backward. I had spent years listening to defendants replace direct verbs with soft ones. Struck became contacted. Stole became borrowed. Threatened became warned. And violence became guidance. Vance turned to me. "What did you observe?" Quinton interrupted. "He is biased against me." Vance kept his eyes on me. I spoke as I would have wanted any witness to speak. At approximately 7:40 in the evening, Owen reached for the bread. His sleeve touched Vexley's glass, and a small amount of wine spilled. Mr. Vexley stood, grabbed Owen by the front collar with his right hand, and lifted him from the chair. He then pushed Owen backward. Owen's upper back and head struck the wall. Did Owen hit Mr. Vexley? No. Did he threaten him? No. Did Mr. Vexley release him immediately? No. I released his grip. Quinton smiled without humor. "So now you admit attacking me. I made you open your hand. You twisted my wrist. after you refused to release the child. Vance looked at the cracked wall. What did Mr. Vexley say? He said. Owen needed to learn respect. Pamela stepped forward. My husband was disciplining his grandson. One deputy turned toward her. You saw the incident? She paused. I was present. Did Mr. Vexley lift the child? He was trying to control him. Did the child strike the wall? It happened very fast. The deputy wrote something down. Natalie spoke from near the dining table. Owen should have listened. Vance looked at her. You are his mother? Yes. And you saw your father lift him? Natalie's eyes moved toward Thomas. My son did not rescue her. I saw Owen hit the wall, she said. That was enough to change the entire room. Vance nodded toward the deputies. Separate everyone. No more discussion between witnesses. Quinton's confidence finally broke. You cannot order people around in my home. A deputy approached him. Turn around. What? Place your hands behind your back. No one is arresting me over a family disagreement. You are being arrested on suspicion of felony child abuse. Quinton looked toward Pamela. She backed away. He looked toward Natalie. She had gone pale. The metal handcuffs closed around his wrists at the head of his own table. The wineglass was still lying on the carpet. The paramedics carried Owen outside. Thomas rode with him. I followed in my sedan. For the first time, Quinton's joke about my old car did not enter my mind. At the hospital, doctors ordered scans of Owen's head, neck, and spine. We waited beneath white lights for nearly 2 hours. Thomas sat with his elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. Natalie remained at the Vexley house to speak with an attorney. That decision told me more than any apology could have. The doctor finally entered. Owen had a small fracture in the second cervical vertebra, the C2. The doctor said the fracture appeared stable. Owen's spinal cord had not been damaged. He would need a rigid brace, careful monitoring, physical therapy, and several months of recovery. Thomas released a breath, then the doctor continued. A slight difference in force or angle could have caused spinal cord damage. What would that mean? Thomas asked. Permanent paralysis, loss of breathing, possibly death. My son covered his face. I watched his shoulders shake. I did not comfort him immediately. There are times when guilt should be interrupted because it becomes useless. There are other times when a person needs to sit inside it long enough to understand what must change. Owen stayed in the hospital overnight. When I entered his room, he was lying flat beneath a blanket with the brace around his neck. Grandpa, I'm here. Is Grandpa Vexley going to come back? Not tonight. Is he mad at me? You did nothing wrong. I spilled his wine. People spill drinks. Mom said I should have been more careful. Your mother was wrong. Owen's eyes filled with tears. She always says Grandpa Vexley only gets angry when people disrespect him. Anger is a feeling. It is not permission that didn't stop him. No. Why? I looked through the glass wall. Thomas was speaking with a police officer in the hallway. Your father was afraid. Of Grandpa Vexley? Yes, but Dad is bigger. Fear is not always about size. Owen thought about that. Are you angry with Dad? Yes. Do you love him? Yes. Can you do both? Most families do. He closed his eyes. Before falling asleep, he said, I knew you would help me. Those words stayed with me. A child should not have to choose which adult in the room will protect him. The fact that Owen had already made that choice meant the family had been failing him long before the wall cracked. Thomas returned after midnight. He sat beside me. I should have stopped him. Yes, I wanted to, but you didn't. He looked toward Owen. Quinton owns the house we live in. He helped finance my company. He pays part of Owen's school. He did not own your voice. Thomas closed his eyes. I know. Do you? He has controlled us for years. You allowed it. Natalie always said keeping peace was better for Owen. Tonight Owen learned what that peace costs. Thomas lowered his head. After a long silence, he said, Dad, there's something about the dealerships. I looked at him. What? I don't know enough to accuse anyone. Then tell me only what you know. Natalie handled paperwork for her parents. Sometimes she used our home computer. What kind of paperwork? Vehicle titles, auction purchases, and payments to another company. What company? North Star Fleet Holdings. It's registered in Delaware. Does it own cars? I don't know. Quinton said it handled transportation and consulting. Where is its office? I never saw one. Why are you telling me this now? Because I heard Quinton and Pamela arguing a few months ago. Pamela said the titles were becoming dangerous. Quinton told her they had used the system for 6 years, and no one had noticed. Did you see documents? Some. I didn't understand them. Do you have lawful access to the computer? It belongs to Natalie and me. We both use the shared files. I looked at Owen. First we protect your son. Thomas nodded. Then we preserve whatever records you already have the right to access. You do not enter Natalie's private account. You do not guess passwords. You do not take documents that are not yours. Are you going to destroy Quinton's business? No. Thomas looked at me as if he did not believe me. Then why look? Because a violent man may also be an honest businessman. One fact does not prove the other. And if he isn't honest, then the evidence goes to people with authority. That sounds like revenge. Revenge begins with the punishment and searches for an excuse. An investigation begins with evidence and accepts the result. The next morning, I called Patricia Chen. She referred us to Ora Rook, a family law attorney known throughout Denver for preparing cases so thoroughly that opposing lawyers often entered court already looking tired. Ora met Thomas at the hospital. She was a small woman in her early 50s, with silver glasses and a quiet voice. She listened to the entire story without interrupting. Then she asked Thomas one question. Are you prepared to protect your son even if it ends your marriage? Thomas looked toward Owen's room. Yes. Ora filed for emergency custody that afternoon. She included the medical report, police statements, photographs of the wall, and the recording from the dining room. Natalie's lawyer argued that Owen had been injured during a misunderstanding. Ora replied that a fracture near the spinal cord was not a difference of opinion. The judge granted Thomas temporary sole custody. Natalie could not remove Owen from the hospital. Quinton and Pamela were prohibited from contacting him. Supervised visits could begin only after Owen's doctors and therapist approved them. Natalie called Thomas that evening. He put the phone on speaker with Ora present. You are letting your father destroy this family, she said. Thomas's voice remained quiet. Your father nearly killed Owen. It was an accident. He lifted him. Owen was misbehaving. He has a broken neck. It is a small fracture. I watched Thomas's face change. Until that moment, part of him had probably hoped Natalie would hear herself and return to the person he believed she was. Instead, she confirmed that the child's pain mattered less than the Vexley family's pride. Thomas ended the call. Ora began preparing for divorce. 2 days later, Gerald Hoffman came to my house. Gerald had been a Denver detective before becoming a private investigator. He had helped me with Arthur's smart home case and with Thomas's financial scheme. He was one of the few people I trusted to tell me when my emotions were moving faster than the evidence. Thomas placed a brown file box on my dining table. These came from the shared office, he said. The folders were open to both of us. Gerald looked at him. Did you use Natalie's password? No. Did you enter a company system? No. Did you remove original records? No. I copied files we could already access and brought printed pages that were in the cabinet. Gerald nodded. Good. We began reviewing the documents. I had spent decades listening to white-collar cases, but I was not a forensic accountant. I knew how to recognize contradictions. I did not pretend to have expertise I did not possess. The records involved vehicle auctions, transfers, repairs, and title applications. At first, they looked like ordinary dealership paperwork. Then Gerald noticed that several identification numbers appeared in different states within short periods. One luxury sport utility vehicle had been sold at a flood damage auction in Texas. Less than 2 months later, North Star Fleet Holdings transferred it to a Vexley dealership, with no flood warning on the new paperwork. Another car had been declared a total loss after an accident in Florida. Later, it was sold in Colorado as a clean used vehicle with unusually low mileage. The same pattern appeared again and again. Damaged vehicles moved through North Star, received new paperwork, and returned to Vexley dealerships with histories that no longer showed why insurers had rejected them. That may be title washing, Gerald said. Thomas looked at him. What does that mean? A warning can disappear when a damaged vehicle is transferred through companies or states. The next buyer pays for a clean car, without knowing what happened to it. I opened a folder marked Consulting. North Star had sent monthly invoices to each dealership. The amounts ranged from $40,000 to $55,000. Yet, the company appeared to have no employees, property, transport trucks, or repair facility. Money is moving out of the dealerships, I said. But for what? Thomas asked. That is the question. I called Bernard Stout. Bernard had worked as a federal forensic accountant and tax investigator before retiring. During several long trials, he had explained complicated financial records while I created the official transcript. He had a gift for making fraud sound simple. Money can wear a costume, he once said in court. But it still leaves footprints. Bernard arrived the next morning with reading glasses, a yellow legal pad, and a sandwich his wife had packed. He spent nearly 3 hours reviewing the records. No one interrupted him. Finally, he placed the pages into separate stacks. This company is likely serving more than one purpose. What purposes? Thomas asked. Moving vehicles, hiding their histories, and moving income. He pointed at a series of invoices. These charges are described as consulting fees, but they do not change in a way that matches actual work. The number of vehicles changes, the distance changes, the value changes. The invoices stay nearly the same. He placed several tax summaries beside them. The dealerships report these payments as expenses. That reduces taxable profit. Where does the money go after North Star receives it? Gerald asked. Some appears to return through accounts connected to Quinton and Pamela. Some may have been used to buy vehicles privately. How much? Bernard looked at the documents again. From what we can see, at least $1.4 million may have been hidden over 6 years. Thomas stared at the table. My wife signed some of these. Yes, Bernard said. Does that make her part of it? It makes her name part of the record. Intent is a different question. I looked at Bernard. Is this enough to report? Enough to request that authorities examine the original books. Not enough for us to declare anyone guilty. That distinction mattered. We organized the documents by vehicle, date, and company. Bernard wrote a clear summary explaining what the patterns might mean and where near investigators could find the original records. Gerald contacted the State Attorney General's fraud unit. Bernard sent the financial information through the proper federal and state reporting channels. Thomas provided a statement describing how he had obtained the copies. I did not call Quinton. I did not threaten him. I did not tell Pamela what we had found. Evidence is strongest before the target has time to clean the room. Quinton was released on bond, while the child abuse case moved forward. His attorneys described the dinner as an unfortunate family event. Outside the courthouse, Quinton told reporters that I was a bitter old man using my former court connections to attack a successful businessman. He said I had always been jealous of him. I watched the interview once. Then I switched off the television. People asked why I did not answer him publicly. Because public arguments reward the better performer. Courtrooms reward the better evidence. 3 weeks later, investigators arrived at all 3 Vexley dealerships before opening time. Search warrants covered computers, title records, tax files, and financing documents. Television footage showed agents carrying boxes through the glass doors, while employees stood beside rows of expensive cars. State officials immediately placed holds on dozens of vehicles, whose histories could not be confirmed. The dealership's main lender froze its credit line. Without financing, Quinton could not buy new inventory. Without reliable titles, he could not sell much of what he already had. 2 luxury manufacturers suspended their agreements with the Vexley Group. Within 9 days, all 3 showrooms were closed. Quinton called Thomas more than 20 times. Thomas did not answer. Pamela called me. I recorded the conversation. "You destroyed our family," she said. I reported documents. "You knew what would happen." I knew investigators would decide what the records meant. Quinton made one mistake. He called it discipline. He lost his temper. A child nearly lost the use of his body. You want him in prison. I want the facts heard. And our business? If the business was legal, the records will show that. You know it wasn't. The words came out before she could stop them. The line became quiet. "Pamela," I said, "you should speak to an attorney." She ended the call. 2 months later, Pamela accepted a cooperation agreement. Investigators had found her signature on company filings, bank transfers, and title documents. They also found messages in which she warned Quinton that damaged vehicle histories were becoming harder to hide. Quinton told her to continue. When faced with the possibility of prison, Pamela agreed to testify. She provided access to accounts investigators had not yet found. She explained how North Star had been used to move vehicles and money. She identified which records Quinton had ordered employees to alter after the dinner incident. Natalie refused to cooperate at first. She insisted she had only signed documents her parents placed in front of her. But the custody case revealed more obtained messages showing Natalie had repeatedly dismissed Owen's fear of Quinton. In one message to Thomas, written months before the dinner, she said, "Dad only scares Owen because you keep teaching him. He can question adults." In another, she wrote, "If Owen complains about Grandpa again, remind him who pays for school." The judge read those messages. Natalie's supervised visits began after Owen left the hospital. She attended the first 3. During each visit, she tried to convince Owen that Quinton had not meant to hurt him. The supervisor documented it, or requested stricter rules. At the 4th visit, Natalie became angry when Owen refused to hug her. She left early. She did not attend the next visit, or the one after that. 3 months later, Thomas was awarded sole legal and physical custody. Natalie could continue supervised contact if she completed counseling and followed the court's conditions. She stopped trying. Thomas filed for divorce. It did not feel like a victory. Owen had lost his mother long before the court wrote it down. Quinton's criminal cases took almost a year. The child abuse charge moved separately from the financial charges. But the final agreement and sentencing considered the full pattern of conduct. Pamela testified about the business. Former employees described being told to remove documents from customer files. Buyers testified about cars that developed electrical failures, mold, and safety problems after being sold as clean vehicles. Doctors explained the danger of Owen's C2 fracture. Then I testified. Quinton's attorney tried to portray me as a man seeking revenge. "Mr. Wright, you dislike my client, correct?" "I dislike what he did." "You contacted law enforcement officers you knew personally." "I contacted emergency services and informed a state officer that a child had been assaulted." "You later helped investigate my client's business." "I helped preserve records lawfully provided to us and sent them to qualified investigators, because you wanted to destroy him." "No. You expect this jury to believe you felt no anger?" "I was angry." The attorney stepped closer. "Then this was revenge." "Anger is a feeling. Evidence is not." He paused. I continued. "If the records had shown an honest business, my anger would not have changed them. If they showed crimes, my calm would not have erased them. The attorney returned to his table. After 2 days of deliberation, the jury found Quinton guilty on every major charge submitted to them. The judge sentenced him to 5 years in prison, with 3 years required before he could seek release. His dealership licenses were revoked. The remaining assets were sold. Part of the money went toward taxes, penalties, and compensation for customers who had unknowingly purchased damaged vehicles. At sentencing, Quinton looked at me. He had lost weight. His hair had turned almost completely gray. "You feel powerful now?" he asked, while deputies stood beside him. "No, you took everything." "I did not touch your grandson." He looked away. Pamela avoided prison under her cooperation agreement, but she lost the house, the dealerships, and most of the reputation she had spent years protecting. She moved away from Colorado. Natalie followed several months later. Thomas continued rebuilding his company, but more importantly, he began rebuilding himself. For years, he had confused dependence with peace. He learned that accepting money from a controlling person eventually requires payment in choices. He attended counseling twice a week. He stopped making excuses for what happened at dinner. The first time Owen asked why his father had not protected him immediately, Thomas did not blame Quinton, Natalie, or fear. He said, "I failed you. I was afraid, and I made the wrong choice. You deserved better." Owen did not forgive him at once. Thomas did not ask him to. That was how I knew my son was finally changing. Owen wore the neck brace for almost 4 months. Physical therapy was difficult at first. He became frightened whenever an adult raised a voice. He refused to sit with his back near a wall. His therapist helped him understand that the fear was not weakness. It was his body remembering danger. By the following summer, the fracture had healed. The doctors found no permanent damage. On the first weekend after Owen was cleared for normal activity, I took him fishing at a quiet lake west of Denver. Thomas came too, but he stayed farther down the shore to give us space. Owen sat beside me holding a fishing rod. For almost an hour, neither of us caught anything. He did not mind. "Grandpa?" "Yes?" "How did you know where to look in the car?" "Papers." "I didn't." "You found the bad company." Gerald noticed the vehicle patterns. Bernard understood the money. Investigators found the proof. "But you knew something was wrong." "I knew the papers did not agree with one another." He watched the water. "Is that what you did in court?" "I listened for things that did not agree." "Were people scared of you?" "No, Grandpa Vexley was. He was afraid of consequences." Owen became quiet. Then he said, "I think I want to be an accountant." "Why?" "So I can find money that is wearing a costume." I smiled. "Bernard told you that?" "Yes. It's a good sentence." "It is. Could I catch bad people?" "You could help find the truth." "That sounds better." The line on his fishing rod moved. Owen stood too quickly, then laughed when I reached out to steady him. "I'm okay." "I know." He pulled the rod back and caught a small trout. It was not large enough to keep. Owen carefully removed the hook and released it into the water. On later weekends we began working in my garage. I taught him how to carve small pieces of wood. He made a bird, then a fish, then something he claimed was a car but looked more like a shoe. I kept all of them. Some evenings, Thomas joined us. Other times, Owen and I worked alone. We did not talk about Quinton every week. Recovery is not the same as repeating the worst day of your life until it loses power. Sometimes recovery is simply discovering that a quiet afternoon can remain quiet. I often thought about the moment at the dinner table, when Thomas froze. For years, I believed silence was valuable because it allowed a person to listen. But silence has limits. Silence while gathering evidence can be patience. Silence while someone is being hurt becomes permission. Thomas learned that too late to prevent Owen's injury, but not too late to save his son from the life that might have followed. Quinton believed his money gave him authority. Pamela believed reputation could turn violence into discipline. Natalie believed family loyalty meant protecting the strongest person in the room. They were all wrong. A family is not protected by hiding what happened inside it. It is protected when someone finally refuses to lie. I did not close the Vexley dealerships. I did not revoke their licenses. I did not decide Quinton's sentence, or take Natalie's custody rights. I made 2 calls. The first brought help to a child lying beneath a cracked wall. The second placed suspicious records in the hands of people trained to understand them. Everything that followed came from choices the Vexleys had made, long before I entered their dining room. Quinton used to laugh at my old car, my paper files, and my quiet life. He thought I was only an aging man who had spent decades recording the words of more important people. What he never understood was that every powerful person becomes ordinary when the evidence is placed before a jury, and no amount of money can silence a record once the truth has entered it.